Okay, the next exercise is create your own tooltip. We're going to redesign our pop-up captions from earlier in the gallery of aquatic animals. Okay, this page only has the picture of the whale and the text that's describing it. Our goal is to make the text appear to the right of the picture when we hover over the whale image. So this is what it's going to look like when we load it, but what we want is something like this. Okay, so only when we hover over the picture, I know you can't see the whole thing, then the caption pops up, and it should be centered on the right side of the image. Okay, so that's our first task, but we're going to do it using the property inspector. Hopefully you remember this from lesson 11. The property inspector lets us examine the underlying code and make changes and experiment before adding the final changes back to our web page. So we're going to find the box that would be the text, the tooltip, and we're going to examine it. And what we're going to do is play around with the left and top attributes so that we can give it some room and move it away from the photo. Okay, we're going to also enter text. We're going to double click the attribute name and hit tab. This is going to bring an input box in where we can enter in whatever text we want. Okay, once we're happy with that, we'll take it back and put it in our style sheet. Next, we're going to play around with the padding and margin values so that just padding values so that the text or the text inside of the tooltip isn't, just directly up against the border of the tooltip. We want some room around the text. So we're going to play around with padding. And then finally, we're going to use the visibility property to hide it when it's loaded, hide the caption, and display it when we're hovering. Okay, so that property is going to help us achieve that effect. Let's get started because there's quite a bit here. Okay, so let's run our code. When we run this, I'm going to open this up in a new tab. You are going to see the image of the whale and you will see the tooltip, but it's kind of glued against the photo here, for lack of a better word. We want to move it off the photo and center it, and we want to work with the space around the text here so it's also not right up against the border. We're going to need our inspector for this. So remember to load the inspector, just right click and hit inspect. And you're going to get all the code for your web page. The HTML should be on the left and the CSS is on the right. If you see anything else open in the inspector, just close it. We're not going to need it for now. All right, we want to make sure we're in the styles tab. And to work with this tooltip box, I'm going to find it in my HTML because once I do that, the CSS that goes with it, the corresponding CSS will be highlighted, which will make my editing job easier. So there it goes. There is my whale tip tooltip, and here's the code for it. So I see that left, top, and padding, these are the properties you want to work with. They don't have any values. To add values to them, we're just going to double click the property and then hit tab. Okay, so for the left, I'm going to move something like 325 pixels. Okay, so that should move it away from my image. Beautiful. And then for top, I'm going to maybe move it down 100 pixels. All right. So that looks good. It's definitely moved down, but it's not centered exactly, right? So maybe 100 pixels was too high. I'll reduce that back down to 80. Okay, that looks better. Okay, remember the inspector is a place for you to experiment. Whatever changes we make here, it's not affecting our web page. We're going to have to go back later and add that in. So for now, it's just a place to experiment. You can even reduce it less if you think it's still too far and just play around with it until you think it looks right. Okay, so this looks good to me. The tooltip is away from the image of the whale and it's centered. Now we want to work with the padding property to give some room around the text. If you go down here to the CSS box model, you'll notice that padding is the space around the element. So here's the element. If I am in the element box, it's going to highlight it. Padding is going to be the space around the element. All right, right before you get to the border. Okay, so up here in the padding, it's said to use a value between 5 and 15, so I'm going to use like 10 pixels. Okay, that looks good to me. All right, so I think I'm happy with that. I'm ready to go back and put that in our style sheet. So back over in CodeHS, I'm going to go to our style sheet, and I am going to find my tooltip text rule. Okay, same thing as here. The tooltip text selector matches the tooltip text selector here. Okay, so the left, we set 325. For the top value, we set 70 pixels. And for the padding, we said 10 pixels. So if I run that, should get the same result that I had in my inspector, and I do. Wonderful. Okay, now we're ready to work with the visibility property to hide this tooltip when we load the web page and only show it when we hover over it. So remember that our tooltip is sitting in a class called tooltip text. So I'm going to use that as my selector. Tooltip-text. And I want to set the visibility of that to be hidden. Okay, so if I run it now, my tooltip disappears. I only want it to show when I hover over the image of the whale. So I'm going to find out what class is my whale image in. Okay, so it looks like that's the tooltip class. Okay, and there's also a hint here, remember, for you to use as well. Okay, so for the tooltip hover, okay, so this is when I hover over the tooltip. I want my tooltip text to be visible. Okay, so the selector looks like this. Okay, this is saying when I hover over my tooltip, I want to activate the tooltip text class, and what I want to happen in that class is I want to make it visible. So I'm going to use my visibility property once more, and I'm going to set it to visible this time. Okay, so let's save that. Let's run it. Beautiful. Okay, if you want to open this up in a new tab just to see the full effect. Okay, caption or tooltip is hidden. When we scroll over or hover over our image, it gets activated. Okay, so cool little effect here. And that was quite a bit of coding and work. So you should be proud of yourselves. This one was not easy. Very nice job. And please keep it up. If you have any questions on creating your own tooltip, please leave it for me in a comment below.